Hey guys, MetalJesus here, and time for another Patreon question. This one comes from our friend Riff from Pixel Game Squad, and he asks, what video games do you remember loving, but you played them as an adult and you were let down? Man, excellent question here. Could be somewhat controversial. We're gonna start with Reggie.
All right, guys, so my game is probably gonna be one of the most obvious choices. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles for the NES. I don't know how I got through that game as a kid and how I enjoyed it. I think at the time, you know, when you don't have a lot of games, you take a lot of value in the small collection of games you do have. So being a big Ninja Turtle fan, and I somewhat still am to this day, but I felt like I was obligated to enjoy that game. The game was just very all over the place, you know. Everybody knows the infamous water level. That wasn't even the level I had the most trouble with. I actually got to that level pretty easy, to be honest. The next level was the hardest level for me. Trying to find Splinter, going around the turtle van in that freaking maze, trying to get enough missiles to blow up the barricades. It was so freaking annoying. I'm done with it. If I ever need to see that game again, I'll watch some footage from a YouTube video. Now, right now we're actually celebrating Ninja Turtles, the movie, the 30th anniversary, which is great, but going back to the game, it's just like I just don't know how I got through it. You know, another level was, of course, the Technodrome, the hardest level in the game. Getting the shredder, that last long hallway, trying to get the shredder where everything comes at you on all those different angles was so annoying. And I just like, dude, I don't know how I did this as a kid, you know, but hey, you know, when you're hungry, I mean, you find a way, but I'm full and I'm never playing this game again.
There was a time where I used to pick up and enjoy literally anything with a Pikachu on it. I used to really like the games Hey You Pikachu for the Nintendo 64 and Pokemon Channel for the GameCube, neither of which hold up very well, especially if you're not a kid anymore. So Hey You Pikachu is pretty interesting because it does come with a microphone, and you use this microphone to give Pikachu commands. You go around and you help out other Pokemon that need things like food or whatever, and you know, it's an okay game for a kid, but definitely not something really worth revisiting. Pokemon Channel is even worse. It is pretty much just a watching TV simulator with just a little bit of interactivity. There's multiple channels you watch with Pikachu. They'll do things like a quiz show. There's an art channel where you do some paint by number stuff, and there is a story, but there's really just not a whole lot of actual interactivity going on. It's something that a small child who's still really into Pokemon would enjoy, but I don't even know how I enjoyed it when I was the age I was playing it on the GameCube. I was probably too old for it then, too. Anyways, neither of those games are really worth revisiting, but I do still like Pikachu.
You know, the first game that comes to mind 100% is GoldenEye 64 for the Nintendo 64. That game, at its time, was revolutionary. It was ahead of its time. I thought, you know, it was the first kind of one of those style of games, not being a PC gamer, that I was able to play. And loved it, loved everything about it, loved the 4-player, you know, again, going back to the couch co-op, where it's at a couch co-op, it was in my bedroom, so it was like, you know, me and someone else on my twin bed, someone sitting on the floor, someone sitting on my keyboard stool, you know, playing this game for hours on end every weekend, playing on some GoldenEye 64, and trying to play it nowadays. Man, it's better left as a memory. The controls don't work the way that modern day controls do anymore. So it's hard for me to walk around and maneuver and try to do what I'm doing. So I had a lot of fond memories playing GoldenEye 64 back in the day, but trying to play it now, it's a little rough.
Games you grew up with that as an adult you played, you were let down. I definitely have a game in particular. You know, I lived in the country growing up, and my family would rent me Nintendo games, and that was a big treat. You know, going into town was many miles away, and we rent a Nintendo game, and I would enjoy it. And so one of these games that I actually played quite a bit back in the day was Narc. And Narc was a fairly violent arcade game, and there was a Nintendo Entertainment System port. And back then it was great. It was a 2-player game. You know, it was fun, you know, killing the bad guys, and you know, it was just silly fun. And growing up, I played it and enjoyed it. But as an adult, I went back to play this, and boy, it has not aged well. You know, now there's other ways of playing the arcade, the actual arcade game. It was offered on several arcade treasures, Midway arcade treasures, and you know, this game has not aged well. This port, you know, its graphics compared to the arcade counterpart are very stripped down. It's just not a good adaptation of the arcade game, and so I definitely, if I'm going to go back and play an ARC, I'm going to play the arcade ROM and not this version. So there you have it.
Oh man, this is just, this is not as good as I remember. So, things that I loved as a kid, but as an adult, not as good as I remember, is definitely kind of the Game Gear as a whole. And I feel so guilty about it too, because I love the Game Gear. I have such good memories with my Game Gear. But going back to it later in life, you're like, man, the screen sucks, the battery's dying, like, no time at all. And even looking back, I remember as a kid, I would play it sitting against the wall so I could plug it in. And even some of the games that I played for it when I was a kid also don't necessarily hold up because they're bad games, but Lion King. I replayed this recently for a video on my channel, and like, it's so hard. What did I do? Just replay the same like 2 or 3 levels like all the time as a kid? You know, probably. That's probably what I did actually. But yeah, so my choice, Game Gear as a whole. Sorry, I love you. And I am gonna sneak in a second choice because it's just too good or bad. But that is Chester Cheetah, Too Cool to Fool. Yep, cool guy glasses. Yeah. And I also love this game because I think I was very impressionable when this came out. I just loved everything mascot games, and I loved Cheetos. This was in the height of the Cheetos, so the X's and O's and the paw prints, and God, it was good. But this game, not so much. Like, the sound's not great, the controls aren't very good, when he crawls it's weird, the timing's weird. It's just not a solid game, and I don't know why. But actually, most of the Chester Cheetah games I loved as a kid, but you know what? He's not looking so cool now.
Now, before I give my answer, I thought it might be kind of fun for us to get an answer from Riff, who asked the question. As you guys know, he's been on my channel before, and like I said, he is a good friend. So, take it away, Riff.
When I asked this question to you, Metal Jesus, I didn't think you would in return ask me to answer the question because I didn't want to answer this question because I don't like my answer to this question. And the reason I say that is because the game I'm picking, I was extremely nostalgic for until more recent times. And it kills me to have to say this, but it's GoldenEye 007 on the Nintendo 64. Now, this game is the game that really got me into first-person shooter games, made me really like FPS games, dive into them deeper. And with that, it's a little bittersweet because I ended up liking FPS games so much that when new games started to come out right after that, you know, Xbox 360 I got really into, and now the Xbox One, PS4, I dove really hard into games like Call of Duty, Battlefield, now currently Overwatch, and Paladins. And the problem is I played these games so much, so much, that I kinda never revisited the Nintendo 64 GoldenEye video game. And with that, years went by of me honing in my craft as an FPS person with new style controllers. You know, the way that they're really FPS games are controlled nowadays. So, years later, I'm talking like 10 years went by where I never played GoldenEye, and I had so much nostalgia for it, and I was like, I am gonna have a guys' night, we're all gonna get together, we're gonna play GoldenEye, and we're gonna love it. We played it, we didn't love it, we were horrible at controlling the game, and it might even be kind of my fault that I have this answer because I forgot really how to control it, and I kept trying to get myself to figure out the controls again, and even when I did figure them out again, I just couldn't get it perfect enough. I didn't feel like I was playing as good as I would, let's say, other FPS games. So for me, GoldenEye 007, and it's kind of my fault, and I hate to say it, but that's my answer. I'm sure I got some people upset. That's what I do. All right, have a good one.
So I'm definitely the oldest person in this group, and I remember vividly playing Space Invaders on a real arcade machine when it was new. I was very young at the time, but it made a huge impression on me as a kid. as it did everybody at that time because, again, it was so groundbreaking and it was a lot of fun. And here I have the Atari 2600 version of Space Invaders that eventually got ported over to it, and it's a great version. But if you go back and play Space Invaders today, if I'm being honest, it doesn't really hold up. Yes, it still can be fun in very small doses, but the game is so simple by today's standards, and that's no knock against it. Again, it was doing the best it could do at the time, and again, it blew people away like me as a kid, and kind of sent me on my path as a lifelong gamer. But I think nowadays, when you go back and play Space Invaders, there's just so many other games that take that formula and are so much more interesting. Like, for instance, you have Phoenix, you also have Galaxian here, Spider Fighter, which all these came out on those really early consoles, and then probably my all-time favorite game that's kind of based on that sort of style is Demon Attack, which this is the Atari 2600 version. I played this a lot more at the time than I did actually Space Invaders. And again, I hate saying that because I know it's such an all-time classic game, but it is a little rough to go back and play today. You get bored pretty quickly. Now that said, I do want to mention that on the 30th anniversary of Space Invaders, they actually released an updated version of it called Space Invaders Extreme. I have the PSP version right here. I believe it also came out on the DS. Now I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about this because I'm going to cover it in another video, but if you're going to play Space Invaders today, this would be the one you would want to play because it is so cool. It's a really cool update. And like I said, I'll talk about that later. But anyways, guys, this is going to be a really interesting topic down in the comments because a lot of those games that you grew up with as a kid, they just may not hold up as an adult all these years later. And I would love to know what you think down in the comments below. All right, guys, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for subscribing, and take care.